Hey, so we are at the end of the year now, and I have a Last FM page which I mainly use to keep statistics on what I listen to. So I thought it might be a good idea to just go through and like look at everything I've listened to this year, because I don't use Spotify, so I don't have a Spotify Wrapped. So this is like the next best thing. So this year I've listened to 8,770 songs. There's still like all of tomorrow, but it's not going to go up drastically tomorrow. But that's like less than last year, like way less than last year. Because a lot of time last year I spent listening to music in a Discord server, and that Discord bot could like scrabble. So yeah, my numbers went up a lot because of that. This year, I haven't been listening to as much music. Like, I think genuinely last year, I scrabbled like 13,000 songs, so that's like 5,000 more. And the only other year I've had Last FM was 2020, and I only had that since April 2020, so like there's no data for the first 4 months, so I've only got like 6,000 scrabbles for that year. So you can see here a lot of my scrabbles have been in the second half of this year. Aside from January, for some reason, I don't know what was happening in January, but I listened to the most amount of music out of any of the months this year in January. But yeah, the reason like you can see a massive uptick starting like July is because I stopped being friends with Ollie, and I was suddenly by myself a lot more. Whereas before I was in calls with him all the time, and I wasn't listening to music because I was like listening to him and like watching videos together and stuff. But yeah, starting July, not friends with him anymore, so listen to a lot of music by myself. So I mostly just want to look at the artists. You can see here the really I mainly listen to like six artists this year, or like these are the six artists I listen to the most. And then you can see like everything below position number six here like drops off a lot. So yeah, I think you can say like the top six here are the ones which I mainly listen to this year. But I'm gonna go for like the top 10 and talk about all of them. So surprising nobody, Crywank number one by a pretty large margin. Crywank is my overall top scrabbled artist, and they have been for the majority of the time that I've had a Last FM account. And I only listen to Crywank when I'm sad. So yeah, that is pretty telling that I am sad most of the time. Boo-hoo. But you can see this year, if I click on it, pretty much all of the scrobbles I had for Cryrank this year were like during and after July. So when I stopped being friends with Ollie. So yeah. More recently, though, within the last couple months, I've been listening more to their albums which I wouldn't normally listen to, like this covers compilation they brought out, and I revisited a bunch of their albums which I'd only heard once or twice before, like these two here. I feel like this year I especially spent a lot of time listening to James is Going to Die Soon. That was an album which I hadn't listened to a lot before this year, but yeah, I especially listened to that one. It's a very like raw, it's an emotional album, raw musically and emotionally because he was still a very new musician and the recordings aren't the best, but that's kind of what I like about it, even though it's sort of objectively bad. You can see a lot of my top tracks this year are from that album. A lot of my top Crywank tracks this year are from this album. Aside from Deep Down, I'm really Kirk Van Houten, which is like surprising. I really like that song, but I wasn't expecting it to be like in the top spot. In fact, I was honestly expecting GB eating GB whilst listening to GB to be in the top spot, because that is one of my top scrobbled songs of all time. Obviously, all time being the last like 2.5 years that I've had Last FM. So next up, number two, Lil Peep. This is entirely Ollie's fault. So Lil Peep had been kind of in the background. He'd been like on my radar since like the Hellboy mixtape, which was like 2016, I think, because I used to watch a YouTuber which used his music in the background. But yeah, starting this year, I was in a call with Ollie one time, and he was like screen sharing his music, and Feels came on, and it got stuck in my head, and I like asked him the next day, like, you were like screen sharing a Lil Peep song, and I remembered it, and it's like stuck in my head now. What is it? And he guessed pretty quickly that it was probably Feels, based on like barely any info that I could give him. So yeah, after that I started going through and like properly exploring Lil Peep's discography. Slowly, I started off listening to like just the normie music, his most popular songs like Star Shopping and like Save That Shit. But eventually I've listened to like pretty big portion of what he's put out. I mean, he is like my second most listened artist this year, and like all of my scrobbles for him are this year. Like that was January this year when I heard Feels being screen shared to me and got into his music properly. So yeah, Lil Peep has been part of my music taste for like this whole year now. You can see I listened to him a lot like January and then February, and then kind of dropped off, stopped listening to him, and then when I stopped being friends with Ollie, because the music's sad, I immediately started listening to it again, and probably because it reminded me of him. But yeah, top track, Absolute in Doubt. Probably my favorite Lil Peep song. Can't really say for certain what my favorite is, but yeah, that's definitely up there, and it's my most listened track this year. Then Haunt You, which is another one of my favorites, and then Feels, which started it all. Lil Peep and also Crywank are like two artists I like listen to before I go to sleep. Like I'll lay down in bed with my headphones on and just put the music on and just like kind of drift off, be like half asleep. So that's kind of how I build up a lot of the scrobbles for these two artists, is my sleepy time. Okay, so the next four, number 3, 4, 5, and 6, all have very similar scrobbles, which is a complete coincidence. But first of all, Wings, which this is still baffling to me that this has managed to get to number 3. I mean, maybe by tomorrow I will have listened to like 2 Tyler songs and he will be in number 3. But yeah, Wings is like All Levels at Once's new project on like SoundCloud, and I'm pretty much the only person who scrobbles Wings. I think it's because he doesn't like put the music anywhere to download. You can just stream it on SoundCloud, that's it. So I use like a shitty SoundCloud downloader and I get it in 128 kilobytes per second MP3, and that's like the best I can do. But I love this music. I love like pretty much anything Austin is a part of. His music is amazing. I think this is like my 8th year of being a All Levels at Once fan, including like his other projects, so currently Wings. And I think at the moment there's like a grand total of like 15 songs that he's put out. And like I think like 4 or 5 of them are from this year. But despite that, I've managed to listen to his music like it's a lot. I don't know what it is like entirely, including last year, but like just this year it's 400. So you can see here he hasn't got a lot of songs, so to get that high of a scrobble number, I've listened to the songs which are out many times. This song came out like a couple months ago, like maybe like 2, 3, 4 months ago. Like 76 scrobbles. This is one of my most listened tracks like ever. I do think this is the best song he's done under the Wings name so far. It was a total earworm for me for like the first month or so. In fact, I think you can see here on the chart that like that song probably came out September, and that's why there's such a increase in scrobbles for September. Okay, number 4, Tyler the Creator. This is also kind of Ollie's fault. Because Ollie used to talk about Tyler a lot. I think at one point he even did like a tier list. So, yeah, like being in calls with him like all the time, I used to hear about Tyler and his music a lot. And like I've known about Tyler. Well, I heard Yonkers when it was like fairly new, but I guess he's like really been on my radar since Flower Boy, because people in school were like talking about Who Dat Boy. But yeah, I never liked like hip hop at all when I was in school. I was like at that point in time especially, I was literally just listening to like happy hardcore. But yeah, then Ollie started talking about Tyler quite a lot, and then I started listening to his music, and I think I mostly just listened to like Yonkers, Colossus, and like IFHY. And then like a couple months ago, I started listening to Tyler a lot more, started actually like exploring his discography instead of just listening to those like free songs. So yeah, you can see like pretty much all of these scrobbles have been from the last 2 months. But yeah, Yonkers is still my most listened Tyler song this year. I guess one thing I'm kind of happy about is I'm not one of those like Tyler fans who just likes his newer stuff, just likes Igor. I've listened to all of it now and it's like all really good. I enjoy all of it. Like you can see 2 very different albums here, Bastard and Igor, like right next to each other with the scrobbles. Okay, next up, Porter Robinson. Yeah, I listened to a lot of Porter this year. Porter Robinson's music especially has had a lot of like emotional value to me this year. So you can see here I've listened to Porter's music like pretty much every point throughout this year. Least of all this month for some reason. In fact, this is probably the reason I've listened to him least this month is probably because I've just been listening to so much Tyler. I felt like most of the music I've listened to this month is either like Crywank or Tyler. It's kind of funny here how like my top four most listened tracks for him this year have been, these are like all singles from Nurture. And then Everything Goes On, which is that track he did for like League of Legends, like anime or something. I don't even know what it is, but it's like a song he did for that. And yeah, this one's really nice. It's like one of the first, I think it is the first single he's put out since Nurture. But yeah, I love Potter's music, and it will always be really special to me. Okay, number 6, Machine Girl. I saw them live in June. And there's absolutely no way I would have seen them live if it wasn't for Ollie. And yeah, I'm so glad I got to see them. The thought of me like by myself going to go see what was essentially a metal concert in London. Yeah, like that's not something I would have done by myself at all. Especially since the metal part of Machine Girl's discography, I don't even like that as much, and I barely listen to it. But that concert was still great. I think that's one of those things where like I enjoy it. I enjoyed it a lot more as like a live experience than I do just to sit and listen to that here at my computer, because the energy was so high. So yeah, you can see here that like a lot of I mean pretty much all of my scrubbles for Machine Girl are like, is there more like chill dancey stuff? There's kind of a big split in Machine Girl's discography between like the metal beat your skull with a hammer kind of music and then like the chill like dancey breakbeat kind of stuff. They basically are like two separate things entirely. And like I especially listened to that video game soundtrack they did, Neon White. As soon as I heard that soundtrack, like both parts of it, you can see here, it's my two most scrobbled albums for this year. Like I love those. Okay, so now we're out of the top 6, which is where like the majority of these listens seem to be. So next is Renard. It's kind of weird to me, because I don't really recall listening to a lot of Renard this year, like specifically the Renard alias. And I think the reason for that is I've got a lot of Renard in my just kind of general background music playlist, which I usually have on quietly in the background when I'm like talking to people on Discord. So yeah, I think Renard just kind of like built up over time without me really realizing I was listening to it, because I don't often go out of my way to listen to Renard. I'm not massively into breakcore. I mean, I still like it. I like it more than most genres, but like I don't actively seek it out a whole lot anymore. So yeah, I can see here like all of these top scrobble tracks for this year by Renard are ones that are in that playlist. My Renard album, which I probably go most out of my way to like listen to, like I'll actually choose to listen to the album, is Shout and Bass, which is pretty unlike most of his other albums. Okay, so next at number 8 is Brand New. I don't know, I don't have a lot to say about Brand New. They are one of my favorite rock bands, like easily one of my favorite. And I think overall Brand New are one of my like most scrobbled artists in general. Yeah, number 3. But yeah, I haven't been listening to as much Brand New this year. You can see I had like 700 scrubbles all time, but like only 100 of them are this year. And I basically just listened to these 2 albums. I should listen to Your Favorite Weapon. I've listened to Science Fiction, I'm not a huge fan. And then there's that one other album which I've just never heard before. I haven't heard any songs from it. It came out like late 2000s, I think. But yeah, pretty much all of my top listened brand new tracks from this year are just my top listened brand new tracks from last year. Yeah, they were kind of in the background this year. Number 9, All Levels at Once. It's funny, like, I feel like I've listened to barely any All Levels at Once this year, but I feel like if I had Last FM stats for, like, the previous 7-8 years, All Levels at Once would be in the top 10 for every single one of those years, just because he is one of my favorite artists and has been for all of this time. Like this year I listened to way more Wings, despite the fact Wings only has like 15, 16 songs. But yeah, I love All Levels at Once. It's funny how I've changed so much as a person, because I was like 13, 14 when I first started listening to his music, and I've changed so much as a person and like grown up, but I still just love it all the same. But yeah, I feel like I haven't especially been listening to All Levels at Once this year, so all of my top tracks for Levels this year have been like the ones which I always listen to the most. I love Optical Illusions and Reason and Rhyme. These are only tracks which I discovered like more recently. I never listened to like Lighthouse until years after it came out, and then when I did, like I immediately found these 2. So these ones are actually a lot less stale to me than all of the other ones are, because like the stuff from No More 8-Bit, like I've been listening to that for like 8 years now. Whereas like the stuff off of Lighthouse, I've only been listening to for like, I want to say like 3 years. Okay, number 10 and number 11, they are tied. So number 10, Omnipony, who is still cancelled and still hasn't come back. He does exist though. And my scrubbles for him would probably be a little bit higher. It's just in my Music B library, I have Omnipony and Omni separate because he made music under both of those names. I feel like I didn't especially listen to a whole lot of Omnipony this year. I listened to a lot of him last year. That's when I kind of really was like listening to the most amount of his music because I mean, Crushcore was still relatively new. So yeah, I was still playing a lot of Omnipony through 2021, despite the fact he was cancelled. I know that I was only going to talk about the top 10, but since 10 and 11 have the same amount of scrubbles, I'll just talk about them both. SpongeBob SquareWave, which was another artist that I only listened to because of Ollie, and you can see it was mostly in July. And this shit's really good, and I should probably listen to more of it. It's just a lot of this music is really in-your-face happy, and that's not really the sort of music I feel like listening to right now. But yeah, SpongeBob SquareWave, I've heard the name, like, even back in the Lapvox server, I heard people talking about SpongeBob SquareWave. Obviously, the name stuck in my head because it's fucking SpongeBob. But yeah, in like July, I guess, I think Ollie like just stumbled across his discography, and specifically he found like, it's called Advert Carnage, which is that song which just samples a bunch of like old British TV adverts, and by old I mean like 10, 15 years old. And then from that he started listening to like other SpongeBob SquareWave music, and then he was like, bro, you should like actually check this out, it sounds like your sort of thing. So I did, and it's good, and I should listen to more of it, but like not right now. I guess I'll just scroll through and like see what other artists in this list I have talking points for. Terry A. Davis, he is the guy who made Temple OS, and someone put together like an album of a bunch of the like psalms he made for Temple OS, which is just like very terrible sounding Commodore 64-esque music. And the reason I have 61 scrubbles for this is because that like compilation album is, well, I guess it's that amount of songs long. And I listened to it exactly one time, and I'm probably never going to listen to it again. Kanye, I listened to like a bunch of Kanye this year, specifically within like the last 2 months. Around the same time I was getting into Old Odd Future, I started listening to Kanye. Right before all of that shit came out with like the anti-Semitic comments and all that. I got into Virtual Self this year, finally. I mean, it's basically just one album, and I think it's got like 5 tracks on it. But yeah, that's Porter Robinson's like other name for doing kind of old school Eurodance style shit. Like 2 of the tracks on there are like straight up like speedcore though. It's very Quick Brown Fox-esque. Earl Sweatshirt, because I was getting into Old Future. I think I listened to some rap songs, but I've mostly been listening to just his like debut mixtape that he put out on Odd Future, just the one called Earl. Madvillain, I've been listening to a bit of MF Doom. I mean, MF Doom's been on my radar since I was in college, and the person I used to sit next to in college liked Doom. But yeah, I feel like I've been listening to more Doom than usual this year, but specifically the Madvillainy album. I listened to more Joji this year. I'm not a huge fan of Joji's music. I mean, it's good, of course, but not like super my thing. But Joji was another artist that Ollie always used to talk about a lot, and I mean, we both liked it when he was Filthy Frank and everything, so yeah, I've got some Joji scrubbles. Mostly Glimpse of Us, which came out like not all that long ago. Gimme Love. Let me have a look. What's the other one? I think there's another one. Oh, okay, I guess not. It's literally just Glimpse of Us and Gimme Love that I was listening to this year. And I listened to In Tongues like one time. Okay, the tracks. I don't think there's really going to be a lot to talk about here. So yeah, there's that fucking Wings track. In fact, the 3 top songs are all by Wings. Yeah, these are kind of all just like my top songs from the artists I listened to this year. There's nothing like weird in here that I can talk about. So yeah, that's like my top artists and the statistics of the music I listened to this year on Last FM.